Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Second Party Podcast. Recently, my wife and I have been watching, I would say maybe like a couple of older styled movies, right? Like they've been set in, and not super old, but they've been set and shot in like the 90s.
I was just going to say, define what you mean by old.
Yeah, not super old.
90s movies?
Yeah,
okay.
Like 90s movies. So not super old.
That's old for us.
But they're not hyper modern or contemporary. I think it's probably like one era back when it comes to filmmaking. It's before the era of like widespread CGI.
Okay.
And there's a little bit of a different style to it, in part because of that, but also just in part because of acting differences over time. Right?
Okay. And all the trailers are voiced by the exact same person.
Yeah, and it just kind of described the movie.
John Smith was an ordinary man. That is, until one day, a surprising encounter from his past.
It almost reads like the inside cover of a book instead of
with
like
the narrator.
Trailer.
It's the one guy who narrated every single movie trailer from the 90s. Yeah. And there's a narration that's super cringe.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any movie look good.
Yeah. But I think something that's interesting to observe in movies or television shows from this era is obviously they're extreme things where, you know, it's a spy espionage movie or it's a highly dramatized type of thing. But I do think it's interesting to look back and get an eye into what the culture was like back then, right? Whether you're watching Seinfeld and Friends or movies that were made back in that era, you can kind of see remnants or pieces of what culture was like.
Yeah.
Obviously, you see certain things like people not just having the ability to pick up a cell phone or hailing a taxi cab, where nowadays you just grab your phone and call the person that you need to, or you'd pull out your phone and call an Uber. You wouldn't have to wave down a taxi cab. So certain tropes almost have changed. And I think that that's interesting. But one thing that I think has drastically changed and that you can really observe in some of these older movies is some of the generational differences when it comes to professionalism and what a certain generation experienced. And we've kind of talked about generational differences over time when it came to purchasing homes and how areas have changed over time. But I also think this applies to the job side of things, not just the consumer side of things.
Okay, what do you mean?
Sure. So I think the employer-employee relationship seems to have drastically shifted over time when I go and I look at some of these television shows or movies. So, for instance...
Are you saying this because of the movie we were watching last night?
Yeah, so we watched a movie last night where a lawyer got his first job, and now obviously that's a more prestigious field, being a lawyer.
Do you want to say what the movie is?
I don't even remember
the
name.
It's The Firm with Tom Cruise.
The Firm, okay.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the name. We haven't finished it. Yeah.
We got too tired. It's a long movie.
Yeah. So there aren't... Actually, that's maybe good, because now there can't really be a whole lot of spoilers.
Yeah.
Since we haven't finished it. We
can't spoil it, yeah.
And I don't know if the movie's going to end up being great or not, but we started watching it last night. And you'll get all of this from the trailer anyway. He's a lawyer, and he gets his first job. And like I said, obviously, this is... Being a lawyer, I understand, is a prestigious type of job. So this will be an extreme version of something, but it represents a broader scale narrative, I think, at the time. And that's that in the movie, the man, as part of his like employment deal that he's signing, he gets a bunch of company perks along with his normal salary. So, for instance, like he's given a company car, he's given a signing bonus. The company pays for his move. They provide him a low interest rate mortgage, right? Like lower, presumably, than whatever would have been available to like the general public. They provide him a path towards making more money at the firm. So if after X amount of time he's performing well, then his salary will go up. He'll get a bonus. They provide him a personalized fruit and chocolate basket that's delivered to his home. And they furnish his home, presumably with like some rented thing for him. And they get him new clothes as well. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how realistic that is of what was normal in the culture back then, though, because even in
Sure.
the movie, part of the point is that, wow, it's crazy all the things this law firm is doing for them.
Yes, I agree. What I guess I would counter that with is notes that I have heard from people of older generations, or even from my father. So
Yeah.
just a, and obviously these are anecdotal things, but it points to the culture at the time. So my dad had his first like kind of salaried real job when he got married to my mom. And when they
It
got
was
married,
in the 90s, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And when they got married, my dad's company paid for their honeymoon. So like the plane flight and the hotel
Are
and
you
stuff like
sure
that.
about that? That seems
Yes.
crazy to me.
No.
I'm gonna fact check that
Okay.
with your dad.
Now I don't think they paid for like meals and stuff, but they paid for the flight and the hotel.
Huh.
That's what my dad has told me.
That's strange. That seems strange to me.
I think so that this is part of what I'm getting at. That seems strange to us nowadays.
But was that strange back then too?
I don't know to what degree it's strange in like the mid to late 90s, but it's my understanding that like it's not the craziest thing for a company to be doing some of these things. Now, in the movie, to your point, they're kind of trying to wow him, seemingly, but it's not
unfathomable
Yeah.
that a company would give perks
Yeah.
like that.
It's maybe surprising the degree or how many different perks, but the fact that he's getting a company car isn't unheard of. The fact that he's getting moved by the company isn't unheard of. That they're delivering a fruit basket to him. These aren't unheard of things in principle. Like that would happen at some
would-
firm. You may only get one of these three things, but it's not crazy.
I would like a fruit basket. That sounds that sounds really nice. You know what I get from my company? Here's a branded blanket that's like 2 feet by 3 feet
Yeah.
in dimensions.
Well, actually, here's another one. This is specific to a certain field, but this still exists nowadays, and you were surprised by it when I mentioned it, which is car salesmen, especially at prestigious dealerships, are given company cars.
Well,
Generally
not to,
from
not to
whatever
own,
brand.
but to use,
Correct.
right?
Just like this
like if
dude.
you left the company.
Yeah,
you would
usually
get
it's a
to-
type of lease, but the dude in the movie, I'm assuming that it's
That-
the same kind of thing.
I don't care about that. I'd rather have a fruit basket because I don't care. I don't care about a company leased car.
Honey, not having to pay for car maintenance stuff, it's a massive perk.
Am I just stupid that I feel like I wouldn't care about that at all? Like I wouldn't have a. In my mind, you don't have a car. Like it's not yours.
But you don't have. Okay. Think about it this way.
Maybe I'm being stupid.
Think about it this way. Let's say we had to go buy a car today. Okay. And let's say we go out and we buy some used, I don't know, $10,000 to $20,000 car. Somewhere in there. Right? Okay. And then we drive it for, let's say, 6 years. Right? because maybe you'd be at a company for 6 years. By the way, people are at companies for longer periods of time, but we'll just use 6 years for example. Okay. Let's say you bought the car right in the middle, so 15K, and then you drive it for 6 years. What do you think it's going to be worth after 6
Not
years?
15K, but it's just like.
Well, like what, 5K maybe? Okay, so then you have to sell it,
Am I just stupidly being like?
and you have to service it the whole time.
I want to be more independent from my company like that. Like, if my car that I use for not just work but my personal use, right? Because that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
It's like your car. It's not mine. It's owned by my company.
But the
Like,
lease is in the company's
I don't
name.
like that.
Well, look, that's...
And now I'm like dependent upon my company for this car.
Yeah, but if you went to a different company at the same type
Now
of
I don't have a
job,
car.
you'd get a new one. You'd get a new lease at the new company.
I don't know. That's not appealing to me. I'd rather have a fruit basket.
Okay, my point though is... my gosh, the fruit basket. My point though is you can put a kind of monetary value on this. You can look at how much exactly the company would be paying for a 6-year lease on a vehicle and figure out how much value you additionally got.
Okay.
And I think about certain things like that, not only in how the culture of companies has changed, but also with how that affects or factors into wages. Because if you look at graphs of wages relative to inflation, in many cases, if not on average, they've gone down.
Have they really?
Yeah. Sorry, I should say, it depends on what period of time you're looking at.
Since the 90s? I don't know that they've gone. I don't know. Maybe they have. I haven't seen the stats on that, I guess.
Okay, let me pull it up real quick. Okay, the U.S. earnings per week, inflation adjusted for males over the age of 25, has gone down between 1970 and 2012. If we look at from like maybe 1985 to now, it's about the same. But it's dipped down and then gone up and then dipped down and such. But since the 70s, it has gone down relative to inflation.
What about since the 90s?
Since the 90s, it depends on what point in the 90s you look at. It's about the same as in the 90s. Well, in 2012, it was about the same as the 90s.
Okay, so not necessarily going down then.
We're
Since
comparing
the
it.
90s.
We're comparing it to 2012. If you think that inflation hasn't gone out of control between 2012 and 2023,
Yeah.
I think you're kidding yourself. If we had more recent data,
I guess. Everyone's wage is going down now, though. Because 9% inflation will do that to you.
yeah, I mean,
But do you think that we're getting perks in different ways with jobs now? Because
okay, like that's
Like
a reasonable question, but then I would ask, okay, what?
I mean, I don't think that for the average job to make the same amount of money.
No, let's say the average salaried job.
Yeah, sorry. The average salaried position to make the same amount of money adjusted for inflation as, say, in the 90s or something. I don't know that you need to put in as much time.
I don't know. I don't know how you'd really quantify that.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, especially now with there's so much flexibility about working from home or just flexible work schedules. And I think the culture of workplace has gotten a lot more accommodating to things like having kids, or if your kids are sick, or you have to go to an appointment, or you have to work from home. Like, we were talking about this recently, where that is one of the perks that is not invaluable to us of our jobs is being able to have the flexibility to work from home, to say, you know what, this week I didn't have as much work to do, so I didn't work as much.
I think that is, in many cases, I think that's unique to us. I don't think most people experience that kind of thing. I think most salaried positions
I mean, it does depend.
aren't like ours.
I think if you're working in like the tech industry though.
You think it's better in the tech industry?
Yeah, I think it's probably more flexible. Isn't that like a huge, because there's
Well,
a
it's
shortage.
flexible, but people are working in some cases like insane hours.
Yeah, I mean it
Okay.
depends. It depends, right? Like if you work in Silicon Valley, I'm sure like it's very competitive and all these things. But in general, I feel like especially with this digital age, things have probably gotten more flexible like that with working from home and flexible work schedules and these kinds of things. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but like isn't that the trope of, you know, the working dad back in the 80s and the 70s and the 90s or whatever? It's like, oh, he's never home. He's working
No,
crazy
it was like
hours.
9 to 5. That's the era of like the 9 to 5. Like literally, you've got like Dolly Parton in 9 to 5.
I don't know what that is.
It's a movie.
But
It's
okay.
a movie about like, well, it's a silly movie
Maybe
about
we're
corporate
speculating about
America,
cultural times that we were not around for, and so we're
or like
not
Office
authorized
Space,
to speak on.
or like Office Space.
Okay. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, I do think with certain jobs, there are flexible perks nowadays that, like working from home, that wasn't a thing in the
Okay,
80s.
okay, but I'm gonna push
right?
back on you. Certain things have gotten better. Yeah, sure. But my argument would be that doesn't come about because the company is offering some competitive perk. That's coming about because technology progresses.
Yeah.
It's not like the company has invested oh so much money so that you can work from home. Like the interconnected nature of the internet and
Yeah.
file systems and making phone calls and chatting with people, like that was going to be in place anyway. My point is that there were a hell of a lot of perks, whether they're frequent signing bonuses or company lease vehicles or my here are some other examples even that I remember. When I was a kid, my dad's work would 2 to 3 times a year throw a massive get together party thing. Actually, sorry. There were 4 events. 2 of them were outdoor kind of carnival-y things to bring your kids and family. One of them was a Christmas type of event to bring your kids and family. And then they had a specialty like kind of gala ball thing for just spouses.
It does seem like
That's all gone.
things like that don't really happen
It's
anymore.
that's not a thing anymore,
I mean,
and it
even think
was
about
20 years ago.
not even 20 years ago, right? Like, even think about when The Office was running. Well, maybe that was 20 years ago now. I don't know.
Like the TV show, The
Yeah.
Office.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a thing that it was normal for companies, right? Like Dunder Mifflin, they're throwing these events where it's like everyone brings their family to them. The Christmas parties or
Yeah.
the picnics or whatever.
Yes. So
I do feel like that kind of thing it doesn't seem like that really happens anymore. At least both you and I, the companies we've been working at for our whole adult career working lives, they're probably pretty representative of what working at a fairly large company would be. We both work at pretty large companies
I
that are
would
kind of corporate, but neither of us have had any type of event where it's like, oh, bring your family kind of thing.
yeah.
They have like these dumb events, right? Like the casino night for the employees in the department.
But it's not for families. It's not. Okay, here's another one. The events that I'm talking about, where they're throwing a massive Christmas celebration, there are crafts for the kids, and you can decorate holiday cookies, and there's this big, beautiful, like Rockefeller Center-esque Christmas tree. Okay, these things are just perks. Like when I say it's a perk, I mean the company pays for all of this stuff and you get to go to it. Okay, my company recently held some like breakfast thing. It was actually today. Okay, and
You didn't tell me about that.
yeah, you know why?
Because you didn't go.
Because it's a paid thing. It was a paid
You had to pay
breakfast
to
thing.
go to. Was it like a fundraiser?
I don't know. There were prizes and some raffle and something, but you had to pay just for getting in the door, for
Why
eating,
would you
for whatever.
go to that?
What?
Why would you go to that?
Exactly. I didn't. I didn't, because I'm not going to pay money to
Go to a work event.
go to
Yeah.
a work event. Like, part of it is if you want to foster culture, you have to do things that employees would want to go to. And I want to be clear, you and I work at companies that have, in my opinion, slightly above average perks. One of our companies
yeah, they
has
do.
very, very good health insurance.
Yes.
And another one offers, on top of a 401k match, a pension plan. Okay?
Yes, and
So
I'm
above average perks.
yeah, and I'm not trying to like be ungrateful for stuff like that because I am appreciative of the perks and benefits that both of us get at our jobs. Like,
Yeah.
and like I said, I overvalue things like the ability to work from home sometimes, which we both have. Like that is very valuable to me.
Or a fruit basket.
I would like a fruit basket, yeah. I would probably trade. No, I would not trade 1 day a week
For the fruit basket.
going to work in the office for fruit. I would not.
What
do
if
that.
it was a really good fruit basket?
If I got one fruit basket a week,
Mm.
because here's the thing, my company's done this a few times. Like when they were first trying to get people to come back into the office after COVID, they like reopened the office. Nobody wanted to go back in.
Obviously.
But so they had to basically bribe people to start coming back in. So what they did is we have this big cafeteria because it's a big company. It's kind of like a whole college campus, the place I work. They have this big cafeteria and they were giving everyone food vouchers to like get meals, a couple meals a week or something for like 5 weeks to come back in. And guess what? I went in to utilize those because
On those days, yeah.
the food, that is how you'll get me to come in if you're gonna give me like free food. But-
Sure.
So a fruit basket, you could probably entice me to come in if I got a fruit basket every time I came in, or
Yeah.
once a week or something. You might get me to come in for that.
Yeah. Okay, here's another one, actually.
A car lease though, no.
Okay. But a fruit basket. That might do it. Here's another interesting anecdote, okay? We have somebody in our small group.
I was
who-
thinking about this. I
who-
was gonna
yeah,
bring
yeah.
it up if you didn't.
Okay, so he reached, I think it was 20 years at the company that he's at,
Yeah.
right? Okay,
Something like that.
20
It might have been more than
years at the company. You're right. It may have been 25. It was at least 20 years
Yeah.
at this firm. Okay. You know what you used to get when you'd reach like 10, 15, 20 year type of milestones in certain roles? You used to get like a Rolex watch. That used to be the type of thing that you would get.
that. Fruit basket, maybe.
Okay. What did this dude end up getting? I know.
I don't remember what it was, but it was something really stupid, like a carved hummingbird or like
No,
something
it was a bird painting.
a painting of a bird, yeah. Some framed painting.
Yeah, of a bird.
I think it was something
Like something that you'd go out and get at Pier 1 for
Yeah, I think-
I don't know, $30.
I think it was something that he got to choose from a list of options,
Sure.
and like he picked the bird.
Well, but
it was
I don't.
like-
I don't think the
I don't think
bird
there were
painting
things
was
that
up
were-
up next to a new Rolex. Okay.
I don't think there were things that were like way better.
I don't think it was. Hey,
Like maybe there was a hedgehog you could pick.
Oh yeah. I don't think it was. Would you like a brand new spec'd out MacBook Pro or this bird painting? And he went with the bird painting.
No.
I think they're
wasn't
probably
that.
around a similar value.
Yeah.
So my point is, you used to get something of serious value, like thousands of dollars. It used to be a real, true milestone that you were reaching. Okay, and now you're getting what, a bird painting?
I mean that's
Like, come on.
one example, but yeah, yeah, I know what you mean.
Or think about, like, I understand for some things, like most companies don't offer pension plans anymore. There are very few that do. I understand that there are reasons behind some of these things, but it seems like en masse these companies have hidden behind certain reasons to walk back these things. And yeah, you bring up, oh well, what about COVID? People don't want to be in the office as much. Okay, that's fine, but you don't get to claim this employee centered, we're a family type of mentality when you do none of the things that would have been done at like the average type of job, the average type of upper middle class salaried job a few decades ago. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, and I don't know that, at least not in my experience, I haven't encountered this idea at work of like, we're a family. Like they have a lot of focus on our company culture and this is important. But I don't know that idea of like, we're a little family. Like that is explicitly something that came up in the movie that we were watching.
Sure.
This law firm, they're like, we're one big family.
Okay,
That's a trope in The Office too. Like that used to be kind of
no, that trope has
right?
become even more of a thing nowadays. The
think
problem,
so?
yes,
I don't know.
yes, no doubt about it. There are so many memes about this, honey. That now everyone's we're a family, and it's like a McDonald's.
I don't know. I just haven't really experienced that type of narrative framed in that way at my work personally. I feel like it's definitely different. But again, I don't have a lot of experience in the corporate world. Just one company that I've worked at for several years now. But
look, I'm just saying there used to be a lot of, in my opinion, like important, critical, quantifiable types of perks that you would get at companies. To the point where like your salary is only part of the deal. Like if you're also getting if you're getting a 5% signing bonus and you're getting a company leased vehicle and a number of other things on top of this, celebrations at actual milestones, it's not reasonable in my opinion to compare salary to salary. Just like I don't think it's apt to compare the cost of an electric vehicle to a gas vehicle at point of purchase. Like you need to look at it over a reasonable time horizon to have something comparable.
Why do you think that's changed then? If there's this cultural shift with how companies are operating with respect to how they're providing perks or incentives to their employees or rewards, these kinds of things, why do you think that's changed?
That's a good question. So I think one main component is the participation trophy mentality, the socialist, communist type of mentality. And here's why.
Like HR we can't.
Exactly. HR steps
Yeah.
in and they go, no, how are we allowing John to have this perk when Jerry doesn't have this perk? And it's like, well, John performs better than Jerry.
Okay.
John negotiated for it. Here's a great example. My dad would often talk to me about negotiating for different perks. And one of the things that he always said that he negotiated for in jobs was increased PTO. Because they could always give that out to people.
Oh, you cannot do that anymore.
There is no
No.
effing way that you can negotiate for that. I don't care if you're a director or a VP
Or it's not the norm
or
to be
whatever.
able
You
to.
cannot
Yeah.
negotiate for that. HR will shut that down immediately.
Yeah.
They would rather pay you more now than say, oh yeah, you can have 10% more vacation because that's what you negotiated for.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies, at least in my experience at one company, it's kind of like it's a equation about how many vacation days you get.
It's
You
a
don't
seniority
deviate
thing.
from that. It's you've been at the company for this many years or less, you get this much.
Yeah.
This many years, you get this much. And that is not I really do not think that's something you can negotiate for at all anymore. But yeah,
Maybe
so
if
it's
you
like
get some
these
super small firm, but
these
but
limits set by HR. Or I mean, you're kind of facing this right now with you're kind of up for a potential promotion
yeah. Yep.
and your manager has been pushing to get it for you. But there are all these politics with HR of like, well, technically you haven't been here for this amount of time yet, and we don't give this promotion until, or this title.
And these other
Until this
people
time,
have
and-
been here longer, and
Yeah,
they have
right.
to whatever. And my boss sits here and says, "My guy's been performing way better. I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
This
I
is
can see
insane.
that. So I can see that as being part of it, like this cultural shift with HR.
I think that's a big part of it. I think you also have the frickin' paper pushers, the financial people. They're gonna step in and they're gonna go, oh, from a tax standpoint, we don't have the ability to clearly write off this person's 20-year like seniority gift, and this isn't something easy to quantify. So this is not something that you're going to be able to do at this point in time. So no,
wonder-
your expense has been denied. You need to go through our corporate reward structure, and then you go to the corporate reward structure that's been approved by all these
Yeah.
pencil pushers, and it's gone through 17 committees, and that's how you end up with the completely unoffensive
Hummingbird.
hummingbird painting.
I wonder if part of all of this though is like, okay, we can go one step further and ask why? Like, why do companies get away with that kind of thing now? Why is that accepted? And I think maybe part of it too is like we have more people in the workforce now.
Yeah, there are two
than
main problems
than
with
we
that.
did before. So there's less need to be competitive because there are more, like, just think about standard supply demand, right? Like there's more supply of employees out there. More people work now
Yeah.
than they did in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like especially with the push of women entering the workforce much more prevalently.
Yeah, but
Should we just blame this on women?
what I would say though
I would accept that.
is I still think some of these things come back to HR. Like the reason I still think that these things come back to HR and this kind of like socialist participation trophy mentality, because the reason that some analyst has to have a bachelor's degree is because HR
Yeah.
does that. Now, I mean, you can trace this back and say
And-
if there weren't any
and-
people, whatever, but
Who runs HR?
yeah, the socialist pencil pusher.
Oh, I was going to say women.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. But I'm kind of not kidding.
Okay, but I think another kind of interesting thing that's that's been lost in this, and I think this comes as a result of what I was talking about previously, the loss of these perks, is a general loss of professionalism. I think that has been the workers' response to not feeling, let's maybe say, financially honored by employers. They've said, okay, so after 20 years, I get the hummingbird painting. Okay, well, you know what? I'll show up to work in the jeans and the NFL jersey. Like, if you look back at the quintessential example is people flying on planes when that was kind of a luxury.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you look back at offices in movies, everyone, I swear, is like dressed to the nines. You have people's professions that are clearly identifiable by what they're wearing. Like salespeople looked different than accountants, and salespeople and accountants looked different than engineers. Like there were nuanced differences and certain things that would differentiate these types of people. So when you got a nice watch or something at your 20-year type of thing, that would be different if you were in sales versus an engineer.
I mean, in general, people used to dress comparatively nicer
Yeah.
from how people dress now. Like, this is a thing people talk about online a lot, too. Like, you look at pictures from the 50s and the 60s, and, like, just people going out and about dressed what to us now would be like, you're kind of dressed up going out. Now we have people wearing sweats and yoga pants and t-shirts and hoodies, and like that's everyday wear.
Yeah, so I contend that that's in part a worker response to what the companies have done.
In the work environment, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe. But what I'm just saying is, in general, like, people's fashion has gotten more casual in general.
Yeah, but I'm saying, imagine if sitting in our garage right now, you had a vehicle that the lease was paid for and all the maintenance was kept up
I don't care.
by
If I
your
had a
company,
fruit basket.
and then you drove into the office, you'd think, oh man, I'm driving into the office in this car. My company is, rolling out the silver platter for me. I'm going to show up.
I can't imagine that, but I can imagine doing that if I had a fruit basket delivered to
Okay.
my house.
Okay, well, you can imagine it with the fruit basket then. And here's the other thing. People would stay at companies for that long. 20 years, 10 years,
Yeah.
15 years.
Now, we've talked about this too, and we don't need to go off on a tangent about this right now, but we've talked about how it seems like in order to get paid the most, top salary in a lot of industries, you need to like move companies every 3 to 5 years.
I would take it even a step further. Doing the math, if you take the average year over year merit increase and you take the average promotion increase and then you apply that to like an entry level position and then X many years out, the average salary, it doesn't add up. You come up short when you're taking just the averages. So what that says is if you want to maintain just the average, you must move companies
Right.
and increase
And
in
take
salary
those
when you're
increases.
doing that
Yeah.
to maintain the average, at least in the engineering industry that we work in,
Yeah.
it seems.
Yeah. I have
That's crazy.
I've kind of noticed that too. It is strange. And I know a lot of people who talk about working in tech and engineering and whatever, and they say you need, in order to make the most money, you need to move every 3 to 5 years.
That's what people, yeah, well, I've heard 2 to 4, but basically the same, yeah.
That's wild to me. Like, that should not be the case.
I've talked to my dad, and he said in the past, the best type of path forward that he saw for people was work at a company, do good work, and provided the company is sufficiently large and they to some degree actually reward merit, you will move up,
Right.
and at the fastest reasonable rate that you could.
Yeah, I don't think that's
That's crazy.
commonplace anymore.
Not at all.
Not in the tech industry, at least.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's crazy to me how much that has changed over time, and how much some of those old school mentalities are just completely out the window.
Yeah. I mean, times are different for sure. Like I was saying, I do wonder if there's some things maybe we're not considering in terms of perks that we have now that we maybe take for granted that weren't a thing but back in those days. Like, is standard maternity and paternity leave better now than it was then? Or like some of these kinds of things. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe the other thing that you could say is you could come to a similar conclusion that we did when it came to our like housing episode when we were discussing like the boomers, where I basically said it's not clear to me that that was ever sustainable, because if you look at debt either on an individual or a national level, it's going through the roof. So clearly, like with that deficit being run, yeah, it's not surprising that things are looking great while you're running up a bunch of debt. So I don't know, maybe there's the silver lining a bit. I think maybe another aspect to why this is happening is I think things are run significantly more lean than they were in the past.
Yeah, I could see that. Efficiency.
Like we're trying to eke every single dime out of everything.
Yeah.
And it's tough because I'm a real pragmatic person. And on the surface, that makes sense to me. But then,
And how do you quantify employee happiness and how that contributes to the
yeah,
success of a company? Like, these aren't simple answers.
the best companies, though, do seem to play this very long-term game where it's about keeping employees happy, or if they are leaving, having them leaving on a good note, making sure that the top talent wants to come to your company. And sometimes that means, yeah, we have to spend a little bit more. You have to be a little bit more flexible. You have to add those perks even though they're not clearly quantifiable. Like sometimes the cheapest thing is exactly that, the cheapest thing. To get something quality, you have to pay more. And eking every dime out of everything doesn't get you there. This kind of reminds me actually of, like, Jordan Peterson talks about this when it comes to iterative games, right? Where if we're gonna play one game between the two of us, I can win by scamming and cheating you. But then what happens is, if you go and talk to other people, or if we have to play future games, my reputation is destroyed, right? So the best play actually is to play an upright and straight game and try and work things out for the betterment of both of us, so that in the future you want to cooperate with me as well. I wonder if that's a component of why this is happening too. Because you could apply the same thing to the workplace, where previously, like the candidate pool is much smaller, and as such, reputation matters. You want to keep people happy. If I can just dispel with somebody and there's 100 other people looking to apply, then great, I'll just pull them. There's not a reputation in the town of whether a company is good or bad to work for. You could be joining some company from multiple states away. Well, I don't know exactly what's causing this. I think it's probably a lot of different cultural changes, all kind of culminating in these changes in how companies do business with their employees. But it was just something that really stood out to me when watching some older content, even from from just the 90s. It's interesting to see how different things are and how much the business landscape has changed. Well, with that, it's getting late. But recently, Taylor Swift seems to have been in the news a lot, whether it's because of whatever new boyfriend she has or some massive concert tour that she's going on. But it got me thinking, when she was younger and she did this kind of shtick, I would say, where she had this kind of girly mentality, talking about small town and the cute boys there and breakups and stuff like that. I think that kind of fit the character and such when she was younger, right? And there's kind of a naivete to that. But now that she's older and she's more mature, the fact that she's still kind of singing about the same types of things, the same stories and narratives that she's going through, it's no longer this kind of young, naive, cutesy type of thing, and instead I just think it's a little bit depressing listening to somebody who, by all accounts, in my opinion, should be more mature and have kind of gone past this, and who still hasn't necessarily settled down with someone. It's a little bit more difficult to listen to somebody talk about breakups when they're mid to late 30s than it is when someone's young and in their teens. In their teens, you got a bunch ahead of you, and that's just kind of how things tend to go for people. But when you're in your 30s and you're still talking about stuff like that, there's just this kind of lack of maturity and just kind of depressing aspect to it, I think. But that's just what I've been musing about recently. If you have any thoughts on potentially why some of the employer-employee relationships and perks have gone away and changed over time, or on the maturation of Taylor Swift over time, feel free to send us an email at secondpartypodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for listening, and have a good night.